second hour of our program. On the line with us, Maggie Haberman, the Pulitzer Prize-winning senior political reporter at the New York Times. She has a new book out, Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America. And Maggie, welcome back to the program. This is a Maggie NYT, by the way, on Twitter, and of course, New York Times. This is a remarkable book. I remember back in the 80s, I lived in Germany for almost 2 years and read, in addition to Schirer's book about, the rise and fall of the Third Reich, several biographies of Hitler. And some of them just kind of reduced it to just this ordinary pedestrian notion of, the man. And I'd like to ask you, what's your assessment of Donald Trump beyond all this, all the detail and all these, in terms of his danger to America?
First of all, thanks for having me. Second of all, the assessment of him really is in the book. I tried not to write a book of takes. I wrote a book of reporting, and people can read from it and take what they want from it. I think that where we see going forward with Trump, we're seeing it today, we're seeing it yesterday as he's making statements on his social media site. Yesterday, an anti-Semitic statement about U.S. Jews. Today, he's attacking a Republican Senate candidate in Colorado for trying for the faintest of distance between himself and Donald Trump. I think he is going to remain a powerful force in Republican politics, certainly, over the next at least year and probably into 2024, even if he doesn't run, which I think he will. But the things that he is saying about the elections and the things that he is saying about the systems that are in place in this country are incredibly destabilizing. And I think that is going to be obviously an enormous story going forward.
In I believe it's the Times, maybe it's the Washington Post today, there was a piece about how many Republican politicians are actually adopting Donald Trump's strategy of just basically lying about whatever you need to lie about, on the assumption that Mark Twain was right, that the lie can get halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on. In your book, you talk about Donald Trump's signature moves. I've heard that Ron DeSantis has made a study of him. He's wearing suits that are kind of boxy and oversized like Trump's, and he uses Trump's hand gestures, particularly the white power symbol. Is that a thing now among Republicans to imitate Trump in this regard?
I think that Ron DeSantis has definitely been imitating some of Trump's mannerisms. I think that other candidates have imitated some of his behavioral approaches. I don't think there's anybody who has tried to do a full-on Trump capture. I think it would be really hard. He's pretty sui generis in the political system, and he certainly was sui generis in pop culture. But there is definitely a trickle-down effect of what he learned in New York City over many decades and exported to Washington and then to the Republican Party.
Tell us about that.
So, and I write about this, there are these lessons that he took from New York in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, when all politics were tribal, race politics were very pointed. Their crime was very high in the 1980s, despite all the claims, about crime that are made today. And yes, crime rates in some places are up in certain cases, but it is nothing like the 1980s in New York City. And there was a tremendous culture of fear. And he used all of that along with this sort of derivative of Tammany Hall machine boss politics system that existed into the mid 1980s when a then corruption busting prosecutor named Rudy Giuliani put a bunch of people in jail. These all informed how Trump viewed the world, along with the fact that his father had, cleared a path for him, and the fact that Roy Cohn, his lawyer, served as his greatest defender and the model for what he wanted in people who would defend him, and what he thought lawyers, would be willing to do for him. And he took all of this with him to Washington, and he tried to, redraw Washington in his image and wrestled it to, at best, a draw.
Yeah, maybe it's more of a question for somebody like Timothy Snyder, but one of the most destructive things for a democracy is for people to lose their faith in the underlying system of the democracy. Thomas Paine said to take away a man's vote is to reduce him to slavery. Messing with the system, the vote, it seems to me like one of the easiest ways to damage democracy. And this has been a characteristic of Trump's for years. I mean, back in 2016, you had Roger Stone rolling out Stop the Steal. You had Roger Stone claiming that he played a management or at least an initiatory role in the 2000 Stop the Count movement for George W. Bush, back in the day. To what extent is in your estimation, is this denigration of our democratic systems to the point that the majority of Republicans believe that there was massive fraud in the last election? Where does this come from with regard to Trump, and what kind of damage is this doing to the United States?
Well, with Trump, it comes from the desire to never admit defeat and never admit a loss. And, Stone comes at it from a similar end. Stone is one of his, and I write about this, earliest political influencers as well. They go back to the 1980s, and Stone has been at Trump's side every time Trump has been, looking at running for president over the last 30 years, 40 years, with the exception of the 2020 reelection. So that's one thing. But you hit on something that I think is vital in terms of what Trump has exported to Washington, and that is this sense of mistrust. There's no question that in a current political system that is defined by who people hate and who hates them back, he thrives in that. But he thrives on mistrust. And where that comes from is just a desire never to be seen as a loser. The broader implications for that for a society are much more impactful.
Yeah, the title, we're talking with Maggie Haberman, the New York Times writer, her new book, Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America. And Maggie, Confidence Man is, in the grand scheme of, or the tapestry of confidence men throughout the history of the United States, where does Trump fit in? Would you call him literally a classic confidence man, like somebody out of a DiCaprio kind of movie?
I haven't looked at the spectrum of where he might fall. And people can look at that title in two ways. One is, he does project confidence. That is something that he does through everything. And part of that is how he claims that, he didn't lose an election that he lost. And then there is the definition of a confidence man, which is somebody who gains the trust of others to take something from them. And I think that, we have seen over and over again that he fits that definition.
What, in your opinion, are the most important things that America needs to know about Donald Trump?
That he doesn't believe really in anything, that he believes in himself first and foremost. And that, he does have a couple of core id-like impulses on issues like trade, or global alliances, but he is willing to sublimate those if it will help him with something else.
Yeah, it's a remarkable and powerful book, Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America by Maggie Haberman. Maggie, thanks a lot for dropping by.
Thank you.
And good luck with the book.
Thanks so much.
Yep. We will be back. I want to get into this whole, what happens when America is armed beyond a certain percentage. We're starting to see the symptoms of this. Stick around. It's 14 minutes past the hour.